So I wrote something back in 2014, and by accident alone, I happen to have it, because I've lost everything else in this life, where I've tried to store things away and somehow boxes have gotten lost, old letters, things like that. So very little remains of my past writings, which is why I'm trying to take it more seriously going into the future. So here is something dated May 10th, 2014. So by this time, I would have been in Portland. I would have returned to Portland for the last time, that is, for about a few weeks. And I was living in the canopy of a 1985 Toyota truck where I was about to get the canopy. I didn't have yet the homemade teardrop camper, which I used to pull with the truck. And so at this point, I'm not even in the teardrop camper. I'm sleeping maybe even barely on a mattress on the hard, rigid back of the bed of a smaller sized pickup. Gas mileage. I don't think that I may have had insurance, and I may have just registered it. So what I did was at least get myself legal. And then I basically looked at this very first, I really treated it as a social experiment, but homeless experience, at least having a vehicle and moving it around from place to place, and then finding ways to, to work out on a regular basis and take a shower. And I went to Friendly House. I'm just giving you the backdrop, why it wasn't a typical homeless experience. And this writing proceeded going back to cable access TV the next month. I wasn't ready to do it right away. It was a jarring experience being back in Portland. And it's easier for me to talk about some of the stuff than to write about it because it just flows off the tip of my tongue, whereas writing seemed to take much, much longer. So even the things that I'm talking about now or have talked about with regards to Portland may even be worth adding into a book. At the very least, using the CC caption option of the YouTube bots to take a look at where I was psychologically when I was talking about the Matrix and the harvesting of energy and the Archon influence over mankind. I've been talking about this for years, but I also talked about it from the perspective of feeling like I was living it while studying like some sort of an off-world sociologist, just simply disguised as a homeless guy in his 30s, but really doing real data time analysis on the modern fall of Babylon. I was there, folks, for a reason. I was doing real world analysis, and I'm here living off the grid, reporting to you, right, that it's not a paradise. That it is a world that's much better than a world in urban environment, but there are still challenges here. It's still the Matrix here. There are still things that I ponder here. And I look at the positive element of myself facing challenges, be it here or other places, because it spurs something within me that writes, that gives a damn, that ponders the nature of mankind, womankind, that ponders the nature of why we face certain challenges. So I think that's a good enough introduction. I can look at different writings throughout different periods in my life and notice the different tone as well as the handwriting. And periods in which, the handwriting here is so much clearer, actually, than the actual handwriting right now. It's more of like an erratic, just keep going, keep going. So there may be different periods in our lives to where it's expressing itself, and we're expressing ourselves in different ways. So let's begin. May 10th, 2014. I had been in Portland, Oregon a few months now. Or weeks. Okay. The writing begins now. There aren't many clear ways to communicate just what it's like to be in a situation like I'm in right now, other than by writing. At the same time, there aren't many clear ways to remain sane through it all, other than to write it out, which is just what I'm going to do now. I left my laptop charger at the last place that I was staying at, so I've created a goal to handwrite out my most prevalent thoughts, emotions, insights, and more. You see, for months, I've been floating around the city and sometimes traveling outside of it, and I've had extra time to think. What fascinates me is all the places my body has traveled to, especially in recent history, to ponder and muse upon things. One place I keep returning to and often park next to sleep is Laurelhurst Park, right off 39th and Southeast Stark Street. I have a lot of history in this park, as I've come to it with family since I was a child. There are countless memories that I have in this park, the good times and the bad. Although this park is well trafficked by people from all over the city, it still has its spots where for a time a sense of quiet and solitude might be found. The kind perfect for deep contemplation. And within the many histories that I have within this park, many include profound conversations with friends at the time, or solo with my higher self. Over the next couple of days, I'm going to be sharing with you what my life has been like lately, and from there we'll get into some deeper subjects and other things that have been burning in my mind. And I'm going to pause. Sometimes I would have an inspiration to write and not fully carry out what my goals were to really go down deep. I would just kind of return to some other focus. But I did continue on here for a number of pages. Continuing. I've spent a considerable amount of time commuting around with my 1985 Honda pickup. I think it's actually Toyota, so I'd often make that dyslexic slip up. With the canopy that I found on Craigslist for $50. All of it has been done not for leisure, but to find the most peaceful place to rest while I try to figure out where I can go, stay, work, or somehow, some way get back on my feet. I hate to keep butting in here for my original writings, but I was being turned down at this time by multiple places in which I was applying. And I didn't know whether it was my time on Access TV or they just wanted someone else to work at their IHOP. Something that seemingly I was very qualified for at 20, but found myself less qualified for returning to Portland, living basically, and I had it all set up for them to call somebody if they wanted to hire me. Or I think I even had my own phone then. It was like the last months of the prepaid. Going back, personally, for me, a simple sense of stability has been desired that can include any of the following: a base of operations of some form, even as simple as a place to park, close to a place to shower, eat, or use the computer, and or accomplish other tasks. It would be, I'm butting in here again, a few months before I centered around Friendly House and took the advice of Keith Davis, who's been featured on my channel a few times, and then I just gave in by sometime in the summer. And then realized that Keith Davis gave me some good advice by recommending Friendly House, so that would keep me coming there for showers and workouts and brief uses of the computer. Okay. Going back, it can also include finding work or another source of income. The point is that my very basic needs aren't being met and that I'm living a modern day survival story that I feel needs to be shared. Why? Because my life has been interesting enough so far, and this last chapter, or latest, provides us with certain truths about the world we live in now and the values that society today counts, truly counts. My story is a mere reflection of the stories of so many others. I feel a responsibility to share what I've experienced in order to show how easy it can be to stumble into unfortunate situations, such as extended unemployment, coupled with homelessness and a strong sense of alienation or separation from mainstream society. This sense of alienation has driven so many into the spirals of mental illness, addiction, and other forms of madness. Here's the good news! Explanation mark. You weren't experiencing that, were you? Fortunately for me, my ideas have put me into a social outcast category for some time. Therefore, coupled with my background hosting my own show, writing blogs and articles, doing YouTube videos, I feel confident that I'm going to be sharing experiences of mine that many will understand. And for others, it will shine a light on what this experience really feels like. It may only be due to my past experiences that I have the strength to keep pushing forward, or to simply be grounded in the moment. I see this experience of mine as another experience that is happening less by accident and more as something that I will overcome, learn from, and share with others. But what a part of me suspects is that sharing this experience is key. There are many in our world that were swallowed up by this world when they were no longer able to swim strong enough to hold themselves up upon the wolves and sorrows that surrounded them. This story is for them. There seems to be a big emphasis on that. May 11th, 2014. There is no doubt in my mind that this current experience is happening to me now to make me stronger in some ways than it already has. The vast majority of my life, especially the mornings, is spent pondering how I'm going to remain in a peaceful state of mind and to find a way to not end up feeling drained. So while I'm not perfect, certain activities I tend to stay away from, and certain activities I have tried to include in my days. Today I've gone back and forth from meditation, walking, and taking time to stop to write. It requires a certain amount of intention and focus. I am in Laurelhurst Park. It's sunny and many people are out and about. I'm going to be going back to a smoke-free lifestyle after a temporary fallback relapse into old smoking habits, and who knows how much it may have affected me. What I know is that I just came back from a farm in Canby, Oregon, where I stayed on the beautiful property for several days in a tent and helped out in the garden. The problem is that the young organizer of the, and by the way, just popping in here, you can check out what I'm getting at by looking at a visit to Canby, Oregon, Cedar Farms, possibly, if the video's still up. But it was a strange experience. The young organizer of the future work trade organic farm seems to have some issues of his own, which troubled me. I felt affected by his mood, attitude, and found his personality change upon drinking alcohol to be quite annoying. I found his land beautiful, along with his garden design and some aspects of his vision. At the same time, I felt that he wasn't trading much for the work other than allowing somebody to camp in the dirt. As attractive as the idea is, in a way, his personal character, especially while drinking, made the situation appear intolerable. It would be later, by the way, popping in here, that his kind of bisexual kind of nature became a little bit more overt and flaming, adding more detail to the flamboyant story behind it all. This was early on. Going back to the writing, though, I just wish I wrote the whole time instead of just this brief flash in the pan. But I'm going to keep going because it's a trip down memory lane, and it helps me to maintain deep, profound gratitude for where I'm at now. Going back. So this is the how and why I found myself back in Laurelhurst Park. I cannot sacrifice all my personal space and private time to be a borderline slave for a utopian, slave-driving drunk philosopher of sorts, no matter how attractive the whole situation could get. More visitors are coming later, so it's possibly the situation might evolve, but then again, my intuition might be very clear about more than one thing. Today, much of what I've suspected has been confirmed. I'm here at this park at this time to understand and write about my experience. I bumped into someone that I hadn't seen in years. We used to bump into each other years earlier in 2009. I remember meeting him in 2009, 2010, 2011. I was doing a man on the street segment. We hit it off, and from that point on, we kept bumping into each other. But today we met again by accident at Laurelhurst Park. What's interesting is that he actually saw me earlier at Fred Meyer's. I did not see him the first time at Freddy's. However, in most cases, I assume that it is I that does most of the recognizing when passing by familiar people. Anyways, we talked for several hours, and I came to a profound conclusion. So did he. We both came to understand that we were having a parallel experience. We both had a home-free reality to contend with, and yet we both had very similar past understandings, experiences, and perhaps tasks. For example, we both seem to understand that a large part of our experience is to write about it and share it with others. While I'm just now embarking on my literary adventure, while he was aiming to bring a larger work about his adventures to completion. This man and I found a common ground, more clear than any time before and since our paths crossed 3 years earlier. So much has changed. Next entry. While I remain in the same area, I'm now seated outside a Starbucks on 37th and Hawthorne. No, I'm not drinking the coffee. And yes, a hipster apocalypse has invaded Portland and streets like Hawthorne. However, I'm fully aware of my abilities to tap into the creative vibes that run through areas like this. And while I do feel disoriented at times from being in public places, today my writing energy is high, and I have found lately that when I write, strong energy is created. How can that be mindfully channeled for something good today? Meanwhile, the hot sun is bearing down on me directly. I just got to bump in here and interrupt. This is just so much like my writing now off the grid. Going back. Meanwhile, the hot sun is bearing down on me directly. And I wonder just how long I'll manage in this position. One of the reasons I am doing this is to combat my social anxiety or false belief that certain places disorient me. The reality is sometimes I lower my guard or allow my energy to be drained to a point where I am adversely affected by certain areas. The truth is that I have tools today that I didn't have yesterday that can assist me in having a grounded experience when visiting some of these high energy spots. The other truth is that I myself am strongly affecting these areas. My intention is to harness the ability further for the greater good. There must be a reason I've chosen this very spot to unleash a creative release of writing and storytelling. I would also care to mention that I'm wearing sunglasses that someone gave me to further shield my energy field's influence upon others. Let me briefly explain. I believe that my eyes naturally radiate something powerful, which has a fluctuating nature, and for some people it's a bit intense, and for the most ignorant and non-intuitive, I might appear to be someone that could be dangerous, as my heightened field seems to interact with this thesis. Pause. 1 hour goes by. Since writing the last few pages, I had a conversation with someone very well versed in reality. It's pointless to even try and recollect everything that we talked about. However, a random connection was made. I believe that a small crowd was jeering at a meter maid about giving someone a ticket, and I said something in agreement. Then I found myself in conversation with someone behind me, and it lasted at least an hour, and left both of us with a sense of understanding. It's true. Interesting people are drawn to me when I write. Now, today's experience has brought a sense of hope or a sense of happiness, especially in relation to this high energy spot of 37th and Hawthorne. However, at the moment, a drunk has sat down at a chair in front of me. Perhaps the drunken spirit is feeding off the happiness vibe, and I shall walk about some and gather some juice and write further in the next segment or section. Of course, just a little introduction, pause, break in for those of you that are new to this style of writing and my experiences in Portland. Portland is a pretty intense place, and I'm a pretty intense person as well as sensitive, and so different places would seem to emanate their own vibes. And I would tap into these vibes. And there's actually a video where I'm talking about the energy-sucking portal in Portland, Oregon. So you can actually pull up videos and maybe watch the visuals as you're listening to this one, if you have the broadband, and take a look at some of the videos that I was shooting while in Portland. And I also have a Real Portlandia YouTube playlist that you can find by just typing in the Real Portlandia into YouTube, and you'll find my videos. And those are the ones, several hundred of which, were recorded mostly after the period in which you're hearing me write. So this writing is really like an introduction to all of those videos of me purging my perspectives from Portland on how archons use cities to harvest our energy, redirect the lust of not only men but women, how we're played off against each other in subtle ways. And this was really what preceded my flight from Portland, and even the Sharia law hysteria and the white genocide hysteria, which I would be reacting to heavily in 2016, about 2 years after these writings that were done before that was a big deal on the internet and the current political cycle. I was already going through my sense of alienation for other reasons in Portland, of which these current writings are indicating, going back. I go back and forth, walking and thinking about what I should write, and sitting and writing about what I can remember. One thing is for sure, there was no accident that I sat where I sat today and had that interesting conversation. It was as if it was the last of the two conversations were there to remind me that I'm not alone, especially the conversation that I had yesterday. I'm not even sure what that was. Now, also, there's people watching, and there's people watching people, and it's quite a trip. There are a lot of women, right, that want attention all the time, and my abilities to tune them out. And this was actually before that video, Why Don't Just Women Today's Day and Age, which was one of my most watched videos on this channel, even though that's not one of my main topics. But it was a period of seeking liberation, right, from the acceptance and affection from today's female. And it was during that period in which I set myself free from that pain of rejection and chose to set myself free from that sense of longing. And again, I'm bumping in here, I'm not reading. I was addressing that. And I'd come back from that society that worships the flesh, where people are advertising what they're not in fact selling, and using that attention and flair to redirect to something else as a part of their persona or personal value systems. So going back, anyways, they do want to return my focus. I'm not sure what I was writing here. Do want to return my focus to recalling yesterday's synchronicity. So it seems like I'm trying to tune out from one thing and tune back into the other. So this man, about my same age, was having some very parallel experiences to my own life. And he also felt a calling to write a book. He also understood energy, and himself was a, quote, energy worker / healer. He also was moving place to place or surviving temporarily day to day. Only he was doing this without a car. He was spiritual, talented, intelligent, capable, empathetic person who found himself facing great challenges. Great challenges to making his life stable. The parallels in our life continued and continued. However, it wasn't until he leaned over and said the following that waves of understanding and empathy exploded further without holding back. I'm just, white women are cold. This is from this man that I was speaking with. And I'm not trying to bring back old feelings, but Portland, Oregon is a place where a particular reality regarding some of these issues were magnified in my life and why I was left out in the street and what this had to do with that and his experiences. And for some of you that are feeling defensive, it's an awakening to an element and a time and a period to where we were left in the streets for dead. There may have been periods and people that have been exceptions to that rule, but this is the person leaning forward and saying, quote, white women are cold. And he proceeded to talk about being used by Portland women over a course of a long period of time. This taller Caucasian man with brown hair involved in the Portland New Age energy circle was talking about his experiences. And so, no, I'm not going to censor what I'm writing because people are going to feel offended. I'm going to continue. It was a declaration, now I'm going back, it was a declaration of all declarations, a statement of all statements. The ravings of a lunatic to some, a man that can see to others. This truth I understand very well, and have already made plans to journal my experiences. However, this statement was made. A tireless pause where a moment seemed longer than it was, as I realized another human being understood a truth through his personal, hands-on experience, couldn't deny, although to many, this truth could be interpreted as grossly offensive. What I will be recalling are the understandings he came to that I have also come to. In the awakening to these truths of social decay, we ask ourselves, why is this happening? We might also ask ourselves what words we might use to help heal or evolve to a higher state of being. Writing is a very grounding experience for me. It allows me the space to channel most of my ideas in a healthy way. I am trying to live a healthy life. It has become vital that I hold on to my mental health as this experience in Portland continues. To keep the writing going, I need to keep a free flow format. That means going with the moment. I'm doing a mix of several things. I'm still warming up. I've been writing at several locations throughout Hawthorne today. I hear interesting conversations everywhere. I feel a strong sense of self-healing in the act of doing what I am doing. I am also doing this in a town in which I was on the air for several years. I've already dwelled with the fog of emotional sadness upon feeling abandoned by Portland and or my viewers. I am now seeking to heal from those feelings. I recall someone doing a distant energy healing on my heart while I was in Kansas City, Missouri. It was at a time in which I was actually considering going to Illinois. And I'm going to butt in here to volunteer with Gary Franchi on the Next News Network. And fate would have it that I would not make a bad decision. That was at a time where I just wanted to work with other people, and before there was such a divide, before there even was a term like alt-right. Gary Franchi was a different guy. Gary Franchi put out content. If you look at his earliest stuff, he hasn't deleted it. That will clearly show you the difference. And so that's why I would consider Gary Franchi at that time. He was still in transition to becoming what he's become today. Going back to the journal. Obviously, that did not happen. What did happen is that after the healing, I made the decision to return to Oregon. Why? Was there some sort of connection between the heart healing and my newfound willingness to return to this place? I do wonder. Therefore, I do speculate that I am here in Portland to self-heal from the past experiences. I also know that I'm here to sharpen my mind's ability to hold its focus amongst the noise while tapping into the very powerful creative writing energies that exist here. Bumping in here, Alex in 2018. While I may not have written, you can hear the words that I said on my TV show. You can see my YouTube channel. You can read the words from the closed caption to the words that I spoke while actually driving around Portland, driving around these spots and talking about the same issues. So whether I was writing or whether I was speaking, I was still creating content. And yes, I tapped into that element of Portland that I didn't see before. Those people that would see themselves better than others based on some illusions of separation. It is true that in Portland, Oregon, I saw a colder class and group of human beings that were previously warmer a decade earlier. Yes, that was a very big part of my experience. And seeing this and see the colder type of men and women that were populating Portland, Oregon, absolutely, and the dominant demographics. That was my experience. This is where I'm from, as I nearly trip over a cord, going back to my writings. But there's context that someone may not understand. Was there some sort of connection going back a few sentences between the heart healing and my newfound willingness to return to this place? I do wonder. Therefore, I do speculate that I am here in Portland to self-heal from my past experiences. I also know that I'm here to sharpen my mind's ability to hold its focus among the noise while tapping into the very powerful creative writing energies that exist here. In a way, I have embraced this experience to sharpen my inner discipline to create for myself. And create for myself I did in that one calendar cycle year that I was there. Going back. As I write at this coffee shop I hear a spiritual teacher talking to his friend about his ideas, and several times he spoke. He looked in my direction. I might look back, but I do not hold a stare. I am satisfied in my safe bubble, now writing in this corner of the local coffee shop on 44th and Hawthorne about my ideas. I feel more stable with this group of humans around me, and I should make note to return. I have history here. In 2002, 2003, I lived on 52nd in Hawthorne, where I lived with several roommates. And that was a very interesting time for me. It was also around the same part of the solar cycle. There is creative spiritual energy for me to tap into. It's actually probably the best thing for me right now to be grounded in such a way that I somehow regain my position to express itself through writing, even if this journal is mostly private, for now. There is great creativity and healing taking place as I do this. I'm now at the Fred Meyer Deli area right off 39th and Southeast Hawthorne. This is yet another place that I've spent a lot of time thinking and sitting, but not writing. Today changes that. This is another high energy spot with a lot of movement and activity both inside and outside the store. It's a major intersection. It's a well-trafficked store. It's a deli seating area where many wanderers have stopped to rest. It is also another place where one may find themselves deeply pondering the direction of their very next step. And I mean literally. At least that's my perception as I wonder what this place was years ago. I do know that across the street there's an old Masonic building. And again, earlier in this video I mentioned my video on YouTube. What is that? There's a deep energy sucking matrix on 39th and Hawthorne. That's the title. Going back, I do know that across the street there's an old Masonic building that has since been a mix of several businesses, including a bar with a stage for concerts. I have noticed long lines of preteen emo goth kids waiting after school to get tickets to some all-age show there. Very weird spirits spend time around this area. The easiest thing to study is the satanic influence over the majority of the women here. It's as if the land is cursed. There is so much greed. There is so much self-worship. I believe that amounts to a special kind of evil. There is so much vanity here. There is so much selfishness here. There is so much corruption of the spirit here to witness. I told myself I would never return to Portland without certain needs met. And so many asked me when I would return to this place. So few have been there for me. I have seen the Portland ego beast up close, and believe me, it is frightening! ! But I have survived it, and I feel that I have come to understand this land in many ways. In ways many have not. As I return to the old stomping grounds of mine, I do so with full intention to use the experience to fully assist in my soul's evolution. Next section. It's easy to spot them. And they are a world, an enigma, an abyss. All of their own. The short dyed hair, tattoos, sunglasses, bright colored clothing. A noticeable blend. All seemingly in rejection of style and beauty, but in actuality a hyper-style fashion all by itself. The horrors of vanity and attraction horrors are all around us. And the pool of self-serving agendas contaminate the pool of energy within Portland, Oregon. In fact, the spirit of Portland herself is fed upon by this migratory people that in spirit have come to take without a passing notice of how to give back. I have ideas within inside me that are here to mature. Portland is a place where for some reason the women are more attractive on the outside in a sexy, earthy way. And yet there is a very traumatized, broken, afraid, competitive, apathetic, angry side. This does not mean the rest of the world is paradise, but I and others with Portland have concluded that there are certain energetic influences here that create that super hyper guarded position that I have witnessed and experienced. Now, This is an arena that I have given much thought in my life. I've seen some very out of balance behavior, and I have been strongly affected by it as a human and a man. And I wish to make some sense out of it. Out of some highly complicated and controversial topics, I have lived in fear. And I literally FEAR, capitalized, of women themselves for so many reasons. It's a programming that I'm seeking to break. Writing is a key to breaking that programming. If I take it to the next level, I will have something edited and published online. Where am I going with this? That will set a great part of myself free. What is there to lose? What am I waiting for? Aren't I already homeless, jobless, girlfriendless, etc., etc.? And I'm obviously telling myself, same shit I tell myself now. Dude, why do you fucking hold back what people will fucking think? You're the one that's alone. It's like I need to remind myself even today. It's like, I shouldn't even let, the idea of people like stopping supporting my work stop me from sharing my truth and my past and what I've survived. And I'm helping other men and women survive as well. Going back to my notes. I remember the title of an old blog post of mine. It was called, "It is through the pain that we can find the way home." And by the way, to those of you that are listening online, you can go to alexansary.tv and type in, "It is through the pain that we can find the way home," or just my name into Google. Next section. May 14th, 2014. Well, I was on a roll there. And it looks like this is one of our last entries. It looks like I just got through to you in a single sitting, just what I did right. And the rest of it, there's a few more things we'll get to. But we're almost done. The rest of it you can find on YouTube with the Real Portlandia playlist. If you're new to my channel, check it out and take a trip down memory lane today. May 14th, 2014. I am back in Canby, Oregon, and I'm seated at a hillside near the main housing complex. I'm staying in a tent. I have determined that the ability to be isolated from the mass of society is worth the work that I will do. I'm back at that farm in Canby. The host is around the same age, but a bit older. And it's been its own adventure, acclimating to his energy, and I'm sure vice versa. I know the last few days of writing has certainly stirred up some energy, so I'll keep doing what I'm doing. I had a number of things I wanted to write about, but for now, I will do what I can in spurts, and then I just stopped. Now, this was... wow, and it looks like I just have ramblings on the following pages. Mankind is under a spell that most people never detect. A level of control that most people never admit aloud. And then just some weird drawing. And then I continue on. Mankind is under a spell that few admit or show signs of having any knowledge of it. I notice that there are many who condemn others, fail to see what it is that is driving the behavior or that they're committing. We are living in what many have described as an open-air mental asylum. Now, that in of itself is its own YouTube brand. Filmed while I'm driving around Southeast Portland. We are not witnessing a global enlightenment. We are not facing the end of the world. We are experiencing what we created and what we allowed to be created. Okay, so that's the end of that rant. But I'm pretty direct with this. Okay, and next thought. We are living in a world with vast numbers of human beings under a spell caused by a variety of causes. Money is one of those spells. Unnatural environments and ways of relating to each other has created a lot of mental illness in this society. A mentally ill society is not able to treat itself. A deranged government cannot be relied on to eventually give back to the people in some way. And again, I'm writing about this way before Trump even came on the scene. Continuing. The very world we live in is making some go crazier and crazier. Money as a spell. And it looks like I was maybe taking notes for something that I was reading. Continuing, our society is plagued with psychological warfare and other forms of trauma, direct and indirect, that has resulted in various forms of PTSD. We are not in a natural state, but rather in an open-air mental asylum that we want to not only survive, but understand how we escape it or evolve beyond it, i.e. evolving beyond the matrix, which has been a consistent theme of mine. And here I am going back to this, well, at least I'm being a little bit more consistent here. On a page towards the end of the notebook, mankind is under a spell. We're back to that. It's obviously an issue that came up over and over again when I was in Portland. I wonder why. Mankind is under a spell of many sorts, caused by many reasons. There are many in our own society that are quick to condemn each other as evil. Yet as a whole, our society fails to identify the spirit of evil or deception that operates behind governments and other structures today. It is difficult for mankind to come to terms with an idea or understanding that they cannot see or touch. Okay, and I think what I was doing here was maybe scribbling things that I wanted to talk about. Archonic influence over the internet, impacting the matrix with our consciousness, archonic influence over Western women, archonic influence over Western men, or men in general, other themes, and then it looks like it just trailed off into a bunch of dirt getting inside the notebook. And the rest is history with the Real Portlandia YouTube series. And sometimes we may not be consistent with a certain goal of ours, right? To write and write, but we may sit down and just purge out and write the very things that need to be said, even if it doesn't go on for like the length of a book. But I'm going to pause now and come back, but that's just a flash in the pan, a glimpse into the houseless Alex Ansary in his birthplace of Portland, Oregon in the year 2014.